topic today is the African household dynamic, right?
Okay.
Specifically, what I want to do, and I hope you're okay with this, is give a self-critique as to how our foundation led us to where we are today as far as the dynamic of the household, and things that we think we could do better, or like the generation that comes after us.
Okay.
How do we set the stage better for them as young men and young women?
Let's talk about now growing up in terms of showing emotional vulnerability as African men.
Now that one I have a lot to say, because my tribespeople, my people, welcome back to TJMTM, the Jolamista Madi podcast.
We back.
We're back and live
And
after the holy month,
man.
after Easter season.
That's right.
It's been real spiritual around here.
It really has been.
I can't lie because the man upstairs is watching. I didn't go to church on Easter, but I was there in spirit.
In spirit, right? Exactly.
Welcome back, my bro.
Man, thanks, fam.
What have you been up to?
Well, as you know, finished the month of Ramadan. So Eid Mubarak to all
Eid
of our
Mubarak.
Muslim brothers and
Yes,
sisters who were at least observing the month and celebrated as well. And yeah, like another month of Ramadan in the books for me. And yeah, it's one of those where every year it's like a totally different Ramadan.
Something felt different about this year. I don't know how to explain it, but like it felt like people were more locked in. I don't know how to fully explain it, but like, yeah, even when like April Fools came around,
right?
You saw those jokes about like no one was making jokes because they shit funny.
Hey, folks were on their deen heavy.
People were on their deen, yeah.
Folks were on their deen, so it's good to see, and I think it's a reflection on like the times and the world we're in right now. To have a month to just lock in like that, like people desperately need it, and you see even heightened levels of seriousness in the month.
Yeah,
so
most definitely.
It's good to see.
Yeah, and we're always just praying for peace in Palestine.
Yes,
that's been a big one. That
praying for Palestine.
Yeah,
praying for Congo
as always.
So
it's the continent.
And to all conflicts.
Yeah.
Rooted in capitalism and domination by the so-called superpowers.
Man, whenever we have that conversation, some opinions will fly. But yeah, and happy Easter to all Christians. Those who,
yes.
It's belated, but like those who celebrate mark the ending of Lent season, and yeah, it was. They said this year. They said, "Alhamdulillah, he is risen." That's what they said.
Are they Sierra Leone? That's like Sierra Leoneans, Sierra Leoneans are Christmas. They call themselves Christmas.
No, I love the just the overlap and the connection that we all share during those big holidays.
Exactly.
So
that's all it is.
Yeah, that's what it's about. That's how we grew up, and so we celebrate each other, and that's what it is.
I love it.
What's been happening in the news? Coachella, Thames just performed. She brought out Wizkid
and Justin Bieber.
Shout out Thames, Temi
She's
Lade.
doing big things.
Big things. I think her album's dropping soon.
Okay. Did you see the Rema situation at Dreamville?
I saw that.
Where his sound.
I saw that.
What was your take on that?
I could hear it. I don't know what the DJ was doing or whoever the sound person was. They were cooking him. And so I feel for him. I empathize.
He said it though. I like what he said in terms of like, I'm representing Africa, so get it right.
Yeah, don't play him like that,
I don't know what happened, and I will not make conclusions, but yeah, it's just shocking that the African artist playing has technical issues that leads him to barely not able to do.
He didn't want to perform anymore. Yeah.
So huge apologies are owed to Rema, and I understand the importance of Afrobeats artists expanding their market and really the US has really tapped in, right? This is one of the biggest places.
Fully locked in now.
And I love to see that Thames is doing Coachella, Rema's doing Dreamville.
Yeah.
But the gap is, I think there's still a gap. They still need to, this is what Borner spurred the African giant out of. I still think they look at Afrobeats as this cute category that's just trendy right now.
Right. Yeah, I get that. But I think, especially in the US, there's like the term Afrobeats is just an umbrella because they haven't really understood the regions of music and the styles of music. And like people will say, I'm a piano is Afrobeats. And it's like, guys, come on.
I think, what's her name? DJ Mahogany had a clip where she was talking about people having piano parties and then they're playing like, Afro beats or
they're playing like the SoundCloud edits.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, not the true sound.
Right.
No, yeah, I saw that clip.
There's still an authenticity gap in African music. Specifically, African music's primarily catered to Gen Z and millennials because Afrobeats is millennial. Like, really, that's what it is. Afrobeats at its core is millennial, and I know Gen Zs do like to feel, but y'all came towards the tail end.
Yeah, no,
Y'all came towards by the time Burna Boy and them started really,
It came when Ye was popping off.
Exactly.
I feel it.
But it's such a new genre that we need to understand. That's just a minute representation of true African music across the continent. The different genres we have, the traditional music we have, right? And US right now and Afrobeats is most marketable because of who's consuming it is Gen Zs and millennial.
I mean, and you gotta, give credit where it's due, like the TikToks, the TikTok dances and whatnot. It's growing.
Social media
it's
the genre that came along with social media.
Yeah. And then you see that increase with like K-pop and like, the Japanese like rap movement hip hop movement out there. It's also growing quickly because of like the social media access that these people have.
It'll be interesting. So, I know we'll have a conversation, but it will be interesting. I as a original Afrobeats
day one, Channel O.
Yes.
Urban Tricks.
Exactly. If you know.
MTV Base.
Exactly.
If you know, you know.
But I would want us to have this conversation because I still have some worries on how it's being watered down and kind of also just mixed with other genres.
Yeah. I have an opinion because, like, I heard, like, a clearly Afrobeats track in Afrobeats, like, bass line or drum pattern in a genre where I was like, this is not making sense. But we'll get to that.
Okay, we'll get to that, guys.
For those of you who don't know who we are, I'm DJ ANZO.
Man like ANZO, general.
Over here with my brother, Uncle E.
Come on.
In the place to be. And what we do is we edutain you on all things African, whether it's culture, food, music, I don't know, you name it. We edutain you on all things African. The lens that we speak from is two millennials just canoeing through this thing called life in the diaspora in undisclosed locations. So if you know, you know.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, welcome to the podcast. Quick plug. Blast Fest is coming back this summer.
Okay.
Shout out my brother DJ Blast. Save the date, July 27th. Pre-sales are almost sold out. If you haven't bought your ticket, you will watch from defense.
You know what they say, see you there or nowhere.
Oh, nowhere. But in two serious matters, today we're talking about... Actually, we're revisiting a conversation that we've had in the past. So some of our OG listeners have heard it.
Right.
But the topic today is the African household dynamic, right?
Okay.
Specifically, what I want to do, and I hope you're okay with this, is give a self-critique as to how our foundation led us to where we are today as far as the dynamic of the household and, you know, things that we think we could do better or like the generation that comes after us. Okay. How do we, you know, set the stage better for them as young men and young women?
Okay.
So revisiting that dynamic, right?
We're basically putting up the mirror right now.
Putting up the mirror.
Time to be self-critical.
And I can start with myself.
Okay. So if you were being self-critical of yourself in growing up the household dynamic and how that influence you into, just let's go to young adulthood. What are the biggest flaws or I'll just say flaws that you can reflect back and say you really needed to work on this and grow in these areas or particular areas?
I had a bit of an interesting dynamic because when we moved from the Uganda to the US, everything changed, right? So like all of a sudden I saw my dad doing chores. I saw my dad like cooking, cleaning, all this. Where back home it was like we had people for that, and his job, like as an African man, was to just come home with milk and bread, and then go drink his beer, and we kind of just we always had a happy time at home. But I think in retrospect, I'm glad I was exposed to that early, because when I got to high school and college, it's like, yo, you're doing all this by yourself.
Yep.
And so I know it's supposed to be a critique, but I think that starting there was good for me.
So that's the pros. You're looking at pros and cons.
I'm looking at pros and cons.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the one thing that, now this didn't happen in our household, but it's happened outside in households that I've, either been a part or not been a part of, but visited and been around, is the overall, like, I think respect towards women and sort of consideration for women as intellects, right? Okay. In my family, my dad's side of the family, at least, we have a lot of strong women on that side. So that's what I grew up exposed to. Okay. But I've been in certain African households where it's like, it's almost I don't have I think gender roles are good. We should embrace gender roles. Yes. But sometimes those are taken to an extent.
To an extent.
Yeah. Or to the extreme, rather. And so I've seen that in certain African households. And has that manifested in me? I like to think not, but it's something I pay extra attention to because I don't want to be on the wrong side of that. And when I say wrong side is when you're taking it to the extreme, right?
Question for you. Do you think that you might have developed any unconscious biases due to exposure of, I guess, just patriarchy and male dominance in any African households you saw?
I don't think I developed, I like to think I didn't develop any biases because that wasn't my reality.
Did you ever feel like women had certain roles that they had to do and it was influenced based on what you saw growing up?
I think as a kid, yeah. As a kid, for sure. But then again, being removed from certain environments and also like, in my family, we would have days where like the men would cook, for example, on one day. And then the women would all be in like the living room chilling. It started off as a joke, but then it just became like this like tradition, right? And it was cool to see. So I think that being exposed to that was good because now I'm going to implement that in my future, and like knowing that, oh, my dad actually can
normalizing,
pick up cooking. A pot and a pan and make some dope food. Oh, cool. Maybe I should do that, So, you had my salmon before.
Hey, look, guys, if y'all need a salmon special, ring off an order right to the man across me right here.
But yeah, no, so I like to think of it from my personal experience. Okay. That's what it's been. Okay. However, I do know of the flip side of that, which is where I want to get critical. But I want to hear your perspective. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think as a disclaimer before I share, I have at least acknowledged my upbringing does come from a privileged lens in terms of things you said, like having cooks, having a maid. In that alone, I understand, like it does come from a privileged sense of view growing up back in Gambia, right? Putting that firstly on the table. But yes, I, growing up, I don't think the things you were noting for me, I never... Things that you, I guess, taking care of yourself domestically in terms of, food, clothes, washing your clothes, anything that required your own maintenance.
Yeah.
I had no experience of that, like zero. And my surrounding and just growing up, like guys, that was not what men did. We weren't in the kitchen. We weren't washing plates. I did not wash my clothes. I didn't know anything how to cook. Like, it was just something that was normal for me. That's all I knew.
So you came home, everything was set.
Yeah, like
you
lunch
got
is
up,
ready, come and sit down, eat your lunch, go play football.
go play PlayStation.
So that's it. And I would say growing up, I did have that unconscious bias where it's like, yeah, there's women that are supposed to cook and clean. And for me as a man, go and do what I want to do. Meaning if I want to go play football, or the male figures you saw, like kind of what you mentioned, providers, right? Head of the household. When, dad comes home, then everyone can come and eat lunch. So a very strong head of the household, male figure, and then you saw us as men growing up in that. I felt like that was normal. I felt like, if I grow up to be a man, this is what is normalized.
Right, like most people.
Yes. And that doesn't take away from, funny enough, which is interesting, I didn't extend that over to when I look at my mom, because powerful, strong woman, businesswoman doing her thing.
Yeah.
And to what you realize too, women have such a strong influence on our families. They're like basically the glue that hold, the family together. But for me, growing up, in terms of kind of what you're mentioning, those unconscious biases, in terms of understanding that as a boy growing up into a man, it shouldn't be an expectation to think that women are just simply there to serve you domestically in the household.
Okay.
So I think that was something that I just never thought of or felt like it was even important to acknowledge until you come in the US and, you're like 16, 17, don't even know how to make eggs.
Yeah.
Like, you have to learn everything, how to take care of yourself. And again, I'm speaking from a privileged point of view, but I think it's spurs from growing up where those things were never demanded of me, or the male figures. I don't think it had to come from the women in my family. I think the men, my uncles, my father, the male figures I looked up to be, I always say had the responsibility to educate and make me acknowledge that there are certain expectations I should have that should not be based out of thinking certain aspects should just be, designated to women.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have that. I didn't have that, like, hey, like, maybe consider, helping your sister in the kitchen one day, or asking, hey, can you help clean? Like, if you never saw it, no one ever told you that. Only thing you saw is men show up and say, where's the food? Bring me the drinks. They get served.
Yeah.
You see that for 15, 16 years of your life? Like, come on.
Right. And to add on to that, like, I was of the same kind of...
Not that I'm, saying also, like, that's okay.
No, yeah, of course.
I'm just saying this is what I had. And
that was the reality.
And hence had a gap, yeah.
And for me... So growing up, it was that way, but it wasn't the reality. Back home, that was the reality for me.
Yes.
In the household. But then I came here at a young age, and then it switches, right? Because it's like, you're not going to pay for a maid in the United States.
Right.
Unless you're in the 1%,
yeah.
Right? But when I actually now started to become independent, and it's like, okay, now you're spending time at the dorms in college, and you're hanging out with like, African women a lot, and you start to see those tendencies come back. It like sparks a thought in your head, right? Because I remember like one time I was hanging out at a friend's house, and she brings me, she was so stressed because she didn't have like a full meal to feed me when I was in her house.
Wow.
In her dorm, sorry. And I remember thinking like, this is so backwards, because you shouldn't feel like obligated to feed me. I'm over here passing time between classes at your dorm. I should be grateful that you're even inviting me into your space right now. Mind you, we don't have any relationship past just being friends. But the way she felt about like, oh, I'm so stressed that I'm so sorry I don't have food in my house right now. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. Like, while it like feels nice that someone wants to offer you food, you start thinking of the flip side where it's like, dang, so that's how you grew up. Like, for you, it was like a man's in your house, you have to like take care of them immediately. Yes, yeah. And I get that that's part of like African hospitality and everything, but it's also like, man, I wish you wouldn't get that stressed about that, especially here in America where I could just walk down the subway on campus, get my sandwich and go home.
That's true.
And
that's what we're saying. I know a lot of guys that have friends, they went to boarding school and one way or another had to then,
exactly, they got
that shortcut. They had to then develop those skills.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, and I always am very self-critical to men from the country I am from is when we now leave and come to out west, come to the US, go to Europe, like we quickly realize that we're behind the 8 ball because of the society we grew up in pampered us. We didn't have any accountability. We didn't have any true responsibilities because we just left the primary care of our needs, such as food, as I mentioned, especially, that is such an important aspect of it, to just women. Like basic skills that you need in terms of developing yourself, especially if you ever consider having a partner.
Yeah.
Where you go now, you have to learn that much later than someone else who grew up in a different family dynamic and structure. And again, yes, there's culture, there's tradition, and that's what you grew up in, and that's all you know. I can't blame you for it. But my thing is now, do we make the correction needed to now put ourselves in position, one, to step up and be able to not only expect certain roles or certain things are just for women, especially if you're having a partner. Two, how do you now instill that if you have kids or advise to younger people? Do we just continue the same practice or, No,
I think, so what I would say to that is 100% you have to change the dynamic, right?
Yes.
You have to change the status quo here because the things that we want to achieve, I think that the kind of empowerment that we want to give our women,
exactly,
you have to have a supportive husband behind it,
exactly,
or partner. Let me say it, because let's take for example, let's call him Mamadou's living in New York, right? Rent is through the roof. He just got married to Fatim. They had a baby. She stops working. Right, she's at home taking care of the baby. He's on parental or paternity leave, right? And he's sitting at home expecting her to cook meals,
still cook, clean, and take care of him.
In these here United States, can't happen.
Bro, you summed it up. That is the problem.
Can't happen.
Like that has to end.
Yeah.
Like that is the problem that we see is like, one, we're all talking about the upbringings and the root causes. What it leads to is now, and I'm not going to paint the brush or make any proclaiming statement, but this is how my opinion is in terms of, especially if I speak of Gambian men, where I'm from. We are behind in terms of how we need to empower and uplift our women, period, right? And two, there's that accountability status, like aspect of it, of thinking just the bare minimum is okay. Like just providing and coming back home and say, oh yeah, I'm working, I'm paying the bills, that's it. That's where the buck ends. I just don't see it. Like I have not seen good examples a lot of time. I feel like a lot of the women, for the most part, are getting the short end of their stick because like the men have not really stepped up in taking the responsibility to uplift and empower them beyond what they only knew.
Right. And that's exactly it. if we want the future we want, it has to be in conjunction. It can't be, it can't be this idea that like, oh yeah, this is men's business and we're gonna like figure out the continent.
It doesn't work like that.
Can't work like that. And we all know that in this day and age. And so I think that like it's important that as men and as men holding our fellow men accountable,
Right.
we change that.
We need to do better.
We need to do better.
I think that's a very honest opinion, I will say. And I'm not comparing ourselves to any other race, any other type of men, because I think that's just also pointless. But I think talking about how we grew up, the male patriarchy, that society we saw, where accountability and responsibilities on young boys on how to grow and, be hardworking, take care of themselves, uplift, respect, and empower women, a lot of the times have been either misused or not shown to us in the right way, where now when we do grow up, we don't do a great job and now think that just doing the bare minimum is okay. So, like, how is that going to change, right? Do we talk about this enough as African men? Do we sit down and say, bruh?
The honest answer, no. Honest answer, no. Because, I mean, I think this is one of the things that we just, as in our circles, it's like it's not an imminent thought, it's...
How can we be better?
Right. Not how can we be better, but how can we be better towards, like, women?
Our women.
Being honest, right? It's not like a conversation where I'm just like, man, man, how can I be a better?
So, man, you know what just was burning on me today? I just needed to know how I can be better, How can I make sure?
Right. Right. I mean, it's true, but hey, we're having the conversation, so hopefully that inspires somebody. But I mean, it's not like we're just sitting on our hands talking about football every day. In our discussions,
we will become in these positions one way or another.
Yeah.
And if we don't talk about it or at least have some sort of acknowledgement, we'll never be in a position to make corrections.
Right. Which, I mean, then that becomes my responsibility to hold you accountable.
Yes.
And vice versa. So yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about now growing up in terms of showing emotional vulnerability.
Oof.
As African men.
Now that one I have a lot to say, because I was an emotional kid. Like, I would cry, not all the time, but like I wasn't afraid to like let my emotions run.
Right.
And then one day my pops was like, yo, you wear your emotions on the sleeve. Like, don't do that. Right.
Yes.
And I love my dad, bro. I love my dad dearly, like talk about him all the time. But like, I remember that specifically because it made me think like, as a man, I shouldn't be showing my emotion like this.
Yes.
And I shouldn't be, controversial take, but I do think, not controversial, but I think as a man, you definitely have to have your emotions in check and, think before you speak
100%.
Or express yourself.
I do agree with that.
But I think it's a little overdone sometimes because it's, it becomes numbing almost, where you don't actually confront your emotions. You just let them kind of...
You suppress... And
they simmer, and then you suppress them, and now you become numb to a lot of things that you shouldn't be numb to. So I think in my experience, a lot of the men around me, like we just... Like I couldn't tell you the last time I cried now, even though it's like we probably should be crying and experiencing a range of emotions.
How we feel, we should be able to process and react that without ever having the thought of feeling like, oh, you're a man, you shouldn't do this.
Funny enough, I went to a holistic doctor recently, and they told me that they like measured a few things on my body, and they said I was parasympathetic, meaning my body doesn't react to stress. And they were like, you probably should react to a bit of stress. And I started thinking, I was like, that's crazy that they told me that, because why is it that I'm not reacting? You see some of these other races and whatnot.
Yes.
The smallest thing happens and emotions are through the roof, right? Which that's, is what it is. But I was thinking about it. I was like, wait, actually, like I don't react to stress. I think I just take it on as it comes. And I was like, I've been thinking about that.
Where do you think that comes from?
I think it's from our upbringing.
Right?
Yeah,
The root cause.
Yeah, the root cause.
Bro, I mean, speaking to the choir here.
Yeah.
Like, we I don't want to use the word stoic, but...
You can. I think you can.
It fosters that. Because growing up, I've never seen my dad cry. I've never even seen him where I'm like, damn, this dude really in his feelings. I didn't even know what that is. Seriously, like, please, if anyone has ever grown up and saw their dad, I'm like, man, he in his feelings. He probably saw it as anger or just them being loud and expressive. But I really like in his feelings, like, no. I've never, uncles, all my male figures growing up, I have never seen them like just, you can just tell, hey, they're being emotional. Right. Definitely ain't never go see them cry. Like, maybe a funeral. That's like about the only time. And come on, like that I've seen like men in my society growing up in Gambia cry. Probably only funerals.
Yeah, that's the only time.
That's the only time. And I get it. It's funerals. Like, but with their wives, seeing them being emotional around their wives, seeing them being soft.
Never seen it. Yeah, blank page. Still to be written.
But I'm not going to point the finger at them like, you see, well, I never saw it, so that's why, I also wasn't able to, process or be emotional as a man. It influenced me when you have no references that as a young boy or man, like, hey, man, you can also some days just showcase that. It could be even tears of joy. Like, there was no representation of that. And to things that you were alluding to as a man too, that you have to be strong. You're not supposed to cry over any little thing. I used to cry when Manchester United lost.
Exactly,
like,
right.
My emotions came out through sports. Like, we only knew how to express emotions through sports growing up. For me, at least, especially. I'm sure you can relate to growing up back home. We only, as young boys, African boys, sports was the only means we were able to express our emotions, and it was normalized.
That's the time I cried the most.
Thank you. Man. United lost. You played, with your local neighborhood and lost, or like that was my only vivid memory. And people always ask, like, man, why are you guys so crazy about sports? I'm like, you don't understand. Yeah. Unfortunately, we did not being able to process our emotions. We didn't get that through our male figures. They told us, bun that. Yeah, like, bun that. No crying, bro. No crying, be strong, you're a man. But it was acceptable to express ourselves through the sports we played. Yeah. Right? If you really wanted to know someone's personality, go play football with them.
Go watch them play sports.
See how they react. Yeah. See when they get tackled. See when they score. See when it's not going their way. It's a direct reflection of how they express themselves, the emotions. Yeah. I didn't know that as a kid, but now reflecting back, we can say that. But that does not translate now into real world when we become adults and have to interact with people, right?
I think that there's also the flip side to it, where sports actually does teach you a lot of emotional intelligence, right?
Great lessons
to learn there. And so I think that when we come into the real world, some of it presents itself in a positive manner. I think, like, in the workplace, we can talk about that. I think that that's multifaceted, why we have the kind of composure we may have. Yes. But, I think sports contributes to that. You learn how to be a team player. You learn how to.
Men do, Ivan.
That's true.
Only benefits us men. It doesn't benefit us in terms of understanding our sisters, our female cousins, future partners.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
You see?
That's
what patriarchy is. Yeah. That's what causes. It's the good old boys club, right?
Right. No, shit, I didn't think about that.
That's what happens here. Like, that's why we have shared common experience. We can sit down, talk about football, and because the feelings we have are the same. Yeah. But now, I sit down, like, if I'm with my, like another, like I say, I don't want to say generic, but like now, if we have women in here, right? And now we're talking about sports. They're not really, maybe not interested or in tune with it. We just like, they don't get it.
And then it's like to the side.
To the side, right? Yeah. So our interest and things that matter to us based on how we were raised, does it put us in a situation for, when we have partners, just in general, when we have kids, we're able to really allow ourselves to be vulnerable and them see that it is okay.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I think it's important that we start early, because once the kids come around, now you have a whole different scope of responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I think it falls on you heavier to be that, that backbone for them, where they feel like you're a safe place. Because I speak for myself. I want to feel like the safest place for my children. I want them to feel like I can come to him and not feel like I'm about to get judged, or feel like I'm about to get yelled at for just being me, or experiencing this emotion and speaking on it. I want my kids to come to me and just be like, yo, I'm going through this. Of course, you have to control a bit of the dynamic while they're growing, but once they're at an adolescent age and especially able to express themselves, like, I want to be super accommodating and be like, oh, like, these are some of the things I experienced growing up that, I may not have had as an emotional safe space, but you should know that it's okay to express yourself this way.
Yep.
And if you come to me, we'll tackle the problem together. I want to have that.
That's real. And then the other part I want to say is tying it into therapy. I don't even know what therapy was until I came here in the US and started living. I'm like, I see people maybe who've been through traumatic things, thinking like you have to have a traumatic event to do it. Does not exist. I don't even know the Wolof word for therapy. I don't even think growing up I ever even knew any sort of therapist, or I knew they're tough, crazy people. Oh yeah, put them in a camp. They're crazy. They've gone off script haywire.
Yeah.
But going through hardship, wanting to just express your feelings, have someone to talk to, maybe that is not your spouse or partner. Maybe our elders played that role primarily. Yeah. Unfortunately, like the Marabu man, maybe.
Yeah.
The imam, the pastor, played that role indirectly.
Right.
But they can't make like that analysis. They're
not mental health professionals.
Yes, they're not professionals.
Yeah.
And
they're professionals at something else.
Yes.
But they're not mental health professionals. Yeah.
And then I really, there's no such thing. Even now, I go home, I see people, I'm like, bro, maybe you guys need therapy. But they look at it now, it's like a Western foreign thing. Where if you which means it's white people stuff.
Yeah.
I
think that even the forms of therapy that can be presented to them, or to us, I should say, would probably ease up the conversation on therapy, because, like you said, there's not a lot of education around it, right?
None.
It's like in Uganda, there's a place called Butabika, which is like a mental hospital.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you've gone crazy, that's where you go.
Yeah, just put them on the camp and
that's it. Otherwise, you need to go see the imam, the pastor.
Yeah, spirit has came into him, he's possessed, stuff like
possessed. That word, I knew that word before so many things.
We used to see it. I mean, this person is possessed.
And it's like,
could be bipolar.
Yeah. You never know what a
person has ADHD. Oh, this guy is stupid. He's dumb. Or he's dyslexic. He can't read. He's stupid. It's like, okay, guys, let's have a more structured conversation around this. So I know what you mean, and I think that in Uganda, for example, you're not getting a lot of people going to therapy. Therapy might be the bar. Is it because it's a luxury too?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're gonna make a lot of money as a therapist.
I think
so.
Not only that, I'm saying, of course, our countries are very much still developing, and there's so many priority needs for even just from a healthcare standpoint, where I still think mental health needs to, governments need to invest significant resources in training and educating professionals that can, support especially our young population mentally.
Yeah, the youth need it.
That investment is not being done. I get that.
They're fattening their pockets, but you know.
We know what it is, but it's a gap. Because bro, like seriously, like us, we're talking about it now. At least we can be self-critical and be able to at least be honest and say, man, maybe, you know, like I wish someone actually told us it's gonna be okay for you to go to therapy at one point in your life, or have someone to talk to, you know, like that. And if that doesn't happen, like our behaviors, unfortunately, are not gonna be the best towards women in our society. Not just women, across each other.
I agree. I think that more men need to have the, hey, how are you doing, bro? Just conversation.
Exactly.
You know, just, yo, I noticed you weren't here this day. Or I noticed, you know, you've been reclusive. What's going on? Just talk to me. Like, how you been? I find if a lot more men just did that and to each other and, you know, didn't feel like as if it was somebody trying to be all, you know, intimate with you and felt a type of way about that, you'd be calm. So,
okay.
But we'll get into that conversation another time.
It's a safe space, guys. This is a safe space. You know, we're not saying you need it. Like, go ahead and do it. You should feel it. But I do recommend us as men to really consider reevaluating, right? Have a time. I know you say no one's gonna sit down like, man, let me reflect. But there's certain interactions you have with people. Think of how maybe your upbringing has influenced that, and two, really get a time to do your own mental health check-ins.
Yeah.
Try and really force yourself. I know it's not there. It's buried deep down. Try and really force yourself. I'm saying, man, how do I really feel today?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, some of the darkest times in my life, coming out of that is because I had community to talk to, or somebody that I know cared for me, and so I was able to like start a conversation and not feel judged, and then come out of that place eventually. And a lot of it is, you know, a lot of those battles you have to fight yourself, and I think that's a good thing to some extent, because you build resilience. But don't be afraid to just talk.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Yeah. And last thing I'm going to say is, we cannot just point at our fathers, our uncles, our male figures, say, it's their fault. That's why I don't have it. Sorry, this is how I am.
That's the way I was raised. That's how I am. Nah.
We see that a lot.
Yeah.
That's weak.
Gotta do better. But yeah, man. I like this conversation a lot. It was actually therapeutic itself.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, we used you guys.
We used a lot of time.
This is you guys stumbled upon me and Anzo's therapy session. Right
exactly.
Now.
we just had the how can I be a better man conversation.
Exactly. Like, let's start saying that. Let's see how we can do it.
Yeah.
But it's real though, Anzo.
It's real, and I'm looking forward to more of these, and to, you know, the future conversations that we have. We are at time. I think we're a little bit over.
Yes.
But yes, if you haven't tapped in, please like, comment, subscribe, check in with us on all platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, our website, the jolamitsmadi podcast.com. We're staying up to date with a lot of current events and trying to just stay in front of you guys. So a lot of things in the works, and excited to continue the season. Any parting words for them?
No, we appreciate it. We see still the mentions. I think people are still moved in by our spirituality conversation.
Yeah.
And we appreciate all of the support. And one thing I say, though, is with podcasting, I know on Instagram, these platforms, we're just showing clips, segments of our conversation.
Yeah.
I always urge, just not for us, our podcast in general. I know social media is a very sensationalist type of environment.
It is.
But when you watch a clip and you feel so strongly that you want to make a conclusion or based on what you heard, don't be a clip watcher.
Yeah.
Maybe go and say, actually, before I really make this strong conclusion, let me actually maybe go listen to a little bit more of their conversation. You can click links in any podcast's bio to go watch the full YouTube video and then really grasp, before you go in and make a bold statement, or bold conclusion.
Right.
So this
especially
is just,
if it seems objective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're clip watchers, I call them clip watchers. Like whenever I see someone make a conclusion or big double down, put all of their cards when they didn't have no clue what the conversation was, I'm like, clip watcher.
What gets me is the paragraphs on clips.
Yeah, I'm like
anyway. That
5 minutes of going to watch around the full episode, even just that segment, will save you from really because then it's just like you're a clip watcher.
Right.
So please, 2024,
stop clip watching.
Stop being a clip watcher.
For real.
That's just it's a general advice. That's just all I say.
But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. Stay dangerous. Peace, love. We're out.
Bless.